Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about our Benefits Access for Student Success Learning Collaborative and answer whatever questions might be on your mind. Really excited to have you here. Before we get into some of the more substantive stuff, I just want to do a little quick housekeeping. Just quickly, this webinar is being recorded. Wanted to give you a heads up about that. It will be on our website later, so feel free to take a look or share with any colleagues that couldn't make it today. If you are having any tech issues during our info session, please reach out to communications@bdtrust.org and our team will do our best to troubleshoot that with you. As we're talking today, please enter any and all questions you might have into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to talk at you for a little bit and then we'll get into your questions. And then finally, if we don't get to your question today, you can email us at highered@bdtrust.org and we will answer your question later. So before I get into some of the stuff, I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Baker. I'm a senior manager of higher education at Benefits Data Trust today. I'm going to be leading our learning collaborative, so I'm really excited to have you all here and talk about it and answer your questions today. And I will let my colleague Daniel introduce himself real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. I'm Daniel O'Donnell, the Associate Director of Higher Education here at BD Benefits Data Trust. I have the pleasure of working with Stephanie and others across the team on kind of the front end of our partnership. So developing partnerships and different projects with state agencies and systems of higher ed. And excited to be here today.
Thank you. So just real quick, I want to acknowledge, because we have folks from a wide range of states on the call today, that our Learning Collaborative currently is open to higher ed institutions in these 4 states, in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North and South Carolina, thanks to funding from the Kresge Foundation that we've gotten to expand our partnerships with higher education institutions and do benefits outreach work together. We do operate in other states, and so feel free to reach out to us if you're in a different state and you want to explore partnerships together. We're happy to chat about that. But we are starting our learning collaborative with folks in these 4 states because of some relationships and work we've already done in the ground there. Just wanted to acknowledge that to make sure folks from other states know that, but we completely welcome you to stay and listen in and ask questions as we all think about this work together. So to quickly preview an agenda for our time together today, I'll talk with you a little bit about college students and public benefits, give you an overview of what some of BDT's higher ed work has looked like, and then we'll get into the details of the Learning Collaborative and answer any questions that you might have. So first, Benefits Data Trust, we're a national nonprofit that uses data, technology, and policy to streamline public benefits access for folks to improve health and financial security. And the reason that we do this is that there's more than $80 billion in government assistance that goes untapped nationally on an annual basis. So that's an estimate based on a number of public benefit programs. And to put this into a little more of a student-specific context, there's an estimated $3 billion annually that goes untapped in SNAP benefits for eligible college students that are not enrolled in the program, and almost 2 million students who are eligible but not participating in the program. And that's all happening in the backdrop of us knowing that there are significant problems nationally with students and basic needs and security. So this is really the problem that we want to solve together, and we're excited that you want to learn about it together with us. When we say public benefit programs, we're talking about government programs that help pay for food, healthcare, or other basic living expenses. So some of the examples you might be familiar with are SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, although there are also plenty of others. And the reason we are thinking about this in the higher ed space is that this is a sustainable strategy to help complement other campus efforts that many institutions are doing around basic needs. So that might be emergency aid, food pantries, or other programs and partnerships that your institutions are doing. We want you to also be able to tap into those public benefit programs and give your students another sustainable resource to get their needs met. And to put a little bit of a visual context on this, we've got here an example of a single student and a student, a single student and a parenting student. And what's out there, what's the dollar value that they could tap into to help them meet their needs while they're in college, and that combining public benefits with a Pell Grant can double the amount of financial assistance a student is getting while enrolled in college. So with the example on the left here, you see a single student getting a maximum Pell Grant who could also access an additional $8,000 a year in other assistance from public benefit programs. That's an estimate based on the student tapping into SNAP and Medicaid. There's other public benefit programs out there, so there could potentially be even more. And then on the right here, you see an example of a parenting student with a child getting a maximum Pell Grant and an additional $14,000 a year from tapping into public benefits like SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, and the Children's Health Insurance Program for their child. So I think this is just really helpful context to think about, like, why do this work? Like, what's the value to your students? And BDT's model in higher ed, we've partnered with a number of institutions in Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina, and our work is really to help institutions identify which students on their campus are likely eligible for different public benefits and help you leverage your data to be able to outreach to the right students that could be eligible for those programs. And we train institutions on effective outreach to nudge students to application resources. So a lot of this work together is training and then working with you one-on-one to figure out what's your plan on campus for pulling the right data, outreaching to the right students, crafting effective outreach to get students to respond and get them to the right resources to apply for public benefits. And then finally, we learn together what messaging and strategies are effective for your campus and support your ability to sustain the work and connect your eligible students to public benefits year after year or semester after semester. And oh, I'm sorry, I went a little bit too fast. I am going to try to bring on now Dr. Keith Kirkland from Essex County College to share a couple of words about why their campus is adopting public benefits work as a part of their basic needs strategy. Hi, Keith.
Hi,
Okay.
Stephanie. Hello,
Oh,
everyone.
great.
Hello, Daniel.
Hi. So Dr. Kirkland, thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love to hear just a few words about like why this work matters to your campus, why Essex is engaging in it.
Well, first of all, we have a movement on campus that we call We Care, where we reach out to students to find out what are the barriers that would prohibit them from being retained and graduate. So we found out through survey study that there were a number of issues: food insecurity, mental health, childcare, SNAP, all these other services that they lack that they need to stay in school. One of the great things that we, in partnering with Benefits Data Trust, that give us additional public benefits that we can reach out to students that will help us deliver a more comprehensive services to our students to meet the needs where they are. Matter of fact, working with Stephanie and Stephanie working our team, which is a great partnership, and based on the information they gave us, we've identified over 2,500 students, eligible students that would be eligible for the public benefits that we're going to be reaching out to. And we even have about 101 dreamers that we didn't think about until actually the training that we received from Stephanie and Daniel about what other benefits are available. So it helps us round out our outreach to students to provide them with the services they need or to help address their basic needs to help them retain and stay in school and hopefully to graduate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kirkland. It's been a pleasure to learn about the many strategies that Essex is undertaking to support your students. I always love hearing you talk about your work.
Thank you again.
So I want to share quickly a public resource that Benefits Data Trust put out last year, which is a toolkit to help institutions leverage data to find their students who are eligible for public benefit programs. I'm going to have a colleague of mine drop that in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out. Right now, it's currently pretty focused on the data piece of what data institutions hold to find your students that could be eligible for public benefits. And this June, we'll be adding a section to it that's focused on effective benefits outreach. So that will give you some tips and tools to think about writing effective text and email outreach. That's open to everyone. So I always want to promote that. Check that out regardless of what state you're in. And those two pieces of our toolkit really serve as the basis for our work that we'll do together in the Learning Collaborative. We'll work through all of those pieces, any stumbling blocks that you run into, any great strategies that we can learn from other campuses participating in the Learning Collaborative. That's really like the meat of what we're going to do together is find your data, help support you in using that data to outreach to the right students. And then I'll just quickly voice over that in the future, we'll be releasing a toolkit on data sharing strategies to help colleges and local benefit administering agencies enter data sharing agreements and do some work to streamline student benefits access together, but that's forthcoming. And I'm going to talk for a moment about why we do this benefits outreach with a data-driven approach, as opposed to, say, reaching out to everybody on your campus about SNAP or other public benefits. And the reasons for this are, one, that it focuses resources on likely eligible populations or specific at-risk populations. We know that when campuses are doing so much work on the ground to support students around basic needs, we want to make sure we're channeling the right folks to your often limited resources to be able to support students as well as we can. Next, doing data-driven outreach allows the tailoring of outreach schedules based on expected capacity. So we can work together to think about what volume of students on your campus are going to get outreach and how you might want to tailor your outreach schedules based on the capacity of different resources that you may send them to. And then finally, for anyone who is unfamiliar, I just want to lift up this January 2022 Dear Colleague letter that the U.S. Department of Ed released that reminded institutions that FAFSA data can be used to help administer federal benefit programs. What we really want to do with our Learning Collaborative is put that work into practice. We want to make sure you understand what data you have and how that can be connected to helping students access different federal benefit programs. And then I'll just quickly highlight a pilot that we did with a group of 4 Maryland community colleges in the 2022 to 2023 academic year. We saw in this pilot that the college that implemented the toolkit had about double the rate of benefit application submission compared to institutions that did broad outreach to the entire student body. And so I think this is really important when we're thinking about basic needs resources and trying to channel our resources to the students who are most likely gonna get something out of them, and make sure we're leveraging our resources well. So both our toolkit and our Learning Collaborative will help institutions connect students with the 4 benefits you see here. I'll talk about them for a moment in case you're unfamiliar with any of them. And I just want to, again, put a little bit of context on like what's the value of that for an individual student in terms of meeting their basic needs. First is SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, which across the nation has an average value of $179 a month per household member. And so that could be potentially more if there's more than one member of the household to purchase food via an EBT card. That amount's going to vary a little bit state by state. That's information that will work with institutions on the Learning Collaborative so you can understand what that might look like for your specific students in your state. And the next is Medicaid, which provides free or low-cost health coverage. The child tax credit, which provides up to $2,000 per year per child in the form of a tax credit, with $1,500 of that amount being refundable. That's really, really crucial for parenting students. The child tax credit is a resource that many don't tap into, especially if they're not filing their taxes, but the $1,500 being refundable is money in a parenting student's pocket to help them meet those basic needs. And then finally, WIC, which provides supplemental supplemental foods with an average value of $47 a month, in addition to nutrition education, formula, and breastfeeding support. And then lastly, I'll just voice over, we've done some work around the Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides discounted high-speed internet access for lower income households. Enrollments in the Affordable Connectivity Program ended in early February, but it's work that if Congress provides additional funding and that program continues, it's work we're really interested in doing to connect eligible students with that internet and discounted internet access, which we all know is a crucial resource for getting through college. Okay, so to get a little bit more into the Learning Collaborative, and then we'll get to your questions next. Just a quick overview. The goal of our Learning Collaborative is really to just build the capacity of colleges and universities to connect eligible students with public benefits. We want to walk through this with you. We want to figure out strategies together, and we want to set you up so that you do this with us one year, and then the next year your staff and your team feel prepared to be able to continue doing benefits outreach and connect your students with this as a sustainable resource and part of your basic needs work. So through our Learning Collaborative, we will do trainings. I will say this is not all of the trainings, but the core of it is the work around using data to identify eligible students and crafting effective benefits outreach. And we'll also be in a facilitated community of practice together where we can do some of the foundational work to help set you up to implement the work from those two trainings to help you figure out looping in the right players on your campus to figure out evaluating the work and documenting lessons learned so you can build on it over time. And then finally, you'll get one-on-one support from me and from my team to help you when you run into barriers, to help you figure out what makes sense to do in your campus context. And so as an example of that, one of the things that we can do is when you write your benefits outreach, we have a great outreach team at BDT who specializes in writing outreach to folks about benefits. And we leverage their feedback to help you strengthen your outreach plans and answer any questions you might have. And then I just want to quickly voice over, there's two different timeline options for the Learning Collaborative right now. One is a summer cohort that will start in June. The other is a fall cohort that will start in September. Both will cover the same content, but essentially the summer cohort that starts in June will be a little bit more of a condensed training experience, and we'll prep those institutions to launch benefits outreach to their students beginning in or just before the start of their fall semester. And the fall cohort will work with us throughout the fall semester to prep to launch benefits outreach in the beginning of their spring semester. So this way, those schedules look a little different, but the content and the work that we're trying to do together is the same. And so you can see here, we'll work with institutions when we select institutions to sign an MOU. Again, thanks to the Kresge Foundation, this work is free to selected colleges to participate in, but we will sign an MOU and make sure everybody's on the same page about what the work is and prepare to do it together. And then as you can see with the summer cohort in June, we'll do more of a condensed 2-day training to get through all of our topics together, and followed by us being available for individual consultations to support your teams in writing and implementing that outreach, and then convening the group again in November to wrap up and talk about sustaining the work and sharing lessons learned. Versus the fall cohort, which will meet once a month beginning in September to go through the same training topics. We'll provide the same individual support to help institutions plan and implement their benefits outreach. And then in March, we'll do a wrap-up convening and talk about sustaining the work and lessons learned with that group. And just to outline sort of like what's involved if you apply and you sign up to participate in the Learning Collaborative, I just want to outline a few things to make you aware of. One is that we are working with institutions that have a texting platform available to conduct outreach. A lot of BDT's expertise is in the texting realm, so that will really help institutions get the most out of our partnership together. I will say that we know that there are lots of outreach strategies. Most or probably all of our campus partners are always trying to crack like what's the best way to get students to engage with outreach. And so it doesn't need to be only texting. There can be other strategies involved too. That's just to make sure that we get the most out of our work together. I know one question came in the info session registration about like, what about institutions that don't have a texting platform? We do hope you use our toolkit. I do think it's worthwhile to email students, think about other outreach strategies. So just acknowledging there's more than one way to do this. Another expectation for participating institutions is that we're asking each to designate an internal project coordinator to lead work across teams on your campus. Generally, when we're working with our higher ed partners, we interact with student affairs, we interact with financial aid, maybe institutional research. There's usually several teams involved in this work to make it successful, and we welcome and encourage that. We just ask folks to designate a project coordinator that can sort of help lead the work on the institutional side and help us make sure we're interacting with the right people to get it done together. Another ask we have of participating institutions is to coordinate with us to develop and implement plans to evaluate this work. Want to make sure that we're learning together, both for the sake of your individual campuses and the broader world of student benefits access, so that we can figure out what works and document our lessons learned together. And then finally, another expectation for participating institutions is to think through with your team, and this can be with BDT as well, where you'll send students for benefit application help. So we want to get good benefits outreach out to all of the students that could qualify for different programs on your campus. But of course, a piece of that is we'll need to figure out where to send them, whether it is a campus resource if you're fortunate enough to have a campus staff member who helps students apply for benefits, or whether it's local nonprofit partnerships or online and self-service options. There's a lot of different ways that this can look with partners, just something I wanted to put on your radar to be thinking about. So I'm going to quickly outline next steps. If you are interested in participating in the Learning Collaborative, please apply by April 1st. And we will notify applicants of our selection decisions by April 24th and reach out to selected institutions about entering into an MOU, getting your questions answered, making sure we're set up for the next step together. And I will also quickly voice over for not selected institutions. Again, we really hope you access our free toolkit and do some of this targeted outreach to benefits eligible students on your campus. And we also hope that you stay in touch with us and think about future opportunities together. Feel free to follow us on social media. If you go to our website, bdtrust.org, you can opt into our newsletter if you'd like to get updates on a monthly basis about some of the work that we're doing. And finally, you're also welcome to reach out to us at highered@bdtrust.org to explore partnership opportunities together. With that, I just want to highlight a quote from a student in an evaluation project that we did together with Education Northwest and 2 community colleges in Pennsylvania, the Community College of Allegheny County and Montgomery County Community College. We did this evaluation project to take a look at the barriers and facilitators to SNAP access for students. And I thought this was a really great quote from one of the student interviews, a student who told us it would be great if our school reached out to us and told us, hey, since you already qualified for this financial aid in this context, you more than likely qualify for a SNAP program as well. And I just wanted to highlight that. I think it's really, really helpful to hear that like students are just wanting to be told what resources are relevant to them. And that's one of the reasons we think so much about doing targeted outreach to the right students that could qualify. With that, I am going to pass it over to Daniel so that he can ask me some of your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I will just point out we have a mix of questions that came in through the registration portal and a mix of questions that are coming in while you were presenting. And so if you don't hear your question immediately, I will get to it, I promise. So our first question is, what is the cost to participate in the Learning Collaborative?
Yep, no cost. Thank you again, Kresge Foundation. No cost. We just ask that you commit to doing the work and learning together with us.
Fantastic.
Or I should acknowledge the cost of your staff time. That's what we're asking for. That is a cost.
Yes. What data is needed from the students, and what should each of the colleges do with this data?
Yeah, that's what we'll work through together in the Learning Collaborative. The data that's needed from students. So you're not going to be sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the piece of data that's needed from students. We're going to be looking at what data your institution already holds as a proxy for identifying who could be eligible for public benefits. So some of that is financial aid data. We also think about it more broadly than financial aid data. We know that not all students with financial need file a FAFSA, so we can look at other places where your campus might be collecting data. For example, if you have information on who applied for emergency aid programs, very likely to be students with financial need. Definitely feel free to poke around our toolkit now. And that's the subject of one of our hour-long trainings within the collaborative, is to really get into the weeds on what data you hold that's going to be useful to reach out to identifying an outreach list on your campus.
Awesome. And thank you, Dolores, for that question. That was from our audience today. Next question is, do we need student consent to identify them in this way? And I'd like to actually add on another question that's very similar to this from a participant today. It's a bit of a long one, so hang in there. I've already met with someone from our financial aid office regarding using FAFSA data to determine students who might be eligible for public assistance. She was very hesitant and said how she'll need to look into the laws of what she's allowed to share. I understand my role as a case manager, not needing to know actual financial information or social security numbers, but I'm not sure how our office would be able to outreach if we don't know the names of who the outreach is going to specifically. Any thoughts?
Yep. I should have led at the top of the hour with this, but I didn't. My background is in student affairs case management, so I'm very, very familiar with that struggle and with the multiple interpretations around what is allowable with financial aid data across different institutions. What I will say is, like, we're happy to work within your context. And I've seen institutions interpret, okay, we can't share the sensitive pieces of financial aid data, but we can compile an outreach list that doesn't say who has dependents, who's Pell eligible, who disclosed homelessness on the FAFSA, but removing that category have sent just, like, name and contact information to another campus office doing the outreach and have found that allowable. I've seen other campuses take a more cautious approach and say, like, we can only do this if the outreach comes from our financial aid office because we're hesitant and we don't think it's allowable to share with a different department. So there's multiple ways that we can do this, and we're happy to work with what's going to work in your context. I think this is clear, but I'll just say it just in case, is that there's, as part of this learning collaborative, there's no data sharing with BDT. So there's no expectation of external data sharing. We're really talking about internal data sharing and what the interpretations are of various financial aid regulations on your campus. And there's definitely multiple ways to do it. One last thing I'll say is that the Dear Colleague letter that I mentioned earlier that encourages institutions to use financial aid data in the administration of federal benefit programs, it does talk about having written student consent, but it talks about that in the context of external data sharing with SNAP administering agencies, which is different than what we're doing here. What we're asking folks to do is to use their data to outreach to students, not to share data with external agencies or partners. Did I get both of those questions, Daniel, or did I miss any pieces of either of those?
I think you got them, but anyone in the audience, if you need more clarification, feel free to add that into the Q&A box. Our next one is from a registrant from the registration portal. What if your college does not have texting capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, our program is a little bit heavy on text as an outreach strategy. So we are working with partners that have texting capabilities. That said, use our toolkit, email students, use your portal to connect with students. Like, this work can be done in many ways, and not having a texting platform shouldn't stop you from doing benefits outreach to students who could be eligible.
Great question. And then tied to that one from one of our attendees today, what texting platforms have other universities used? I'm unsure if ours has one. It would be helpful to have some examples of platforms. When it comes to texting platforms that other universities have used, we've seen a lot of universities using Signalvine and Twilio before we were able to, or Twilio before they retired some of their products. Sorry, Stephanie is texting me. She will be back in just a moment to hop back on the call. Another question is, we received a question about availability of SNAP students across states. are students able to access SNAP across state? So I believe we had a question about someone who knew an experience of a student or a colleague who'd received SNAP as a student in Oklahoma, and curious if it's going to be the same in North Carolina. SNAP eligibility is administered by the federal government at a high level. So generally, yes, the eligibility will be the same. There can be some differences in the income brackets based on cost of living eligibility wise from state to state. But in order for a student to be eligible, that's governed by the federal legislation. So as long as they meet all the normal income requirements set forward by the state and the federal government, and they meet a student SNAP exemption, then they will be eligible for SNAP. Let me just look through some of these other questions in the Q&A. We're seeing some examples in here from people of Google Voice, Salesforce, TargetX, and additional texting platforms that may be helpful. And then a lot of comments about Stephanie being frozen. So I think, I see one here. Can you provide an example of the type of messaging you send via text message? We find it that we are quite limited with the information we communicate via SMS due to FERPA. That's correct. You wouldn't include any personally identifiable information in that text message, and the text message would go directly to the student, so the one that is protected by FERPA. So it's considered a communication, transactional communication between the institution and the student. I will say that we focus on a lot of behavioral best practices, psychological nudging, things like loss aversion. So thinking about, not just telling someone you could be eligible for SNAP benefits, but saying something like you could be missing out on $150 a month for groceries every month. Things like that is what we would focus on. Let me know if I didn't answer that question directly. And I think that answers all the questions that I see in the chat right now. Oh, I do see one. How do you apply for the collaborative? That's a great question. So I'll drop in the chat our landing page on our website for the Learning Collaborative, which includes the link to the application. But if you feel that you have enough information, you want to jump right into the application, the second link will take you directly to it. So someone's asked, is part of the outreach started by a "this is not spam" type message? It will work with each individual institution to craft the messaging with you if you would like. We typically like to make sure that it's very clear to the student that it's coming from the university, a trusted source. Typically, you will have received consent for that student to receive text messages from you in the past. So in theory, they should be used to seeing that number come through from the university and know it's a trusted source. We've also encouraged some institutions in the past to maybe start with an email communication that kind of softens it up and lets them know they're going to be receiving text messages about this particular topic, but you're also able to kind of get the message in front of the students in two different forms that way. So great question. I'm going to save a lot of these data questions for Stephanie while she's either live or maybe as a follow-up. Says, do we know how many colleges will be accepted into the collaborative cohorts? We are expecting between 4 and 5 per cohort. So for a total of 8 to 10 universities across the 2 cohorts. And I don't see anything that wasn't covered. So any other final questions that we can drop in the chat? Or sorry, in the Q&A? If not, we did have one more topic we wanted to cover today. Welcome back, Stephanie.
I'm back. Okay. Thank you all for bearing with me. That's my worst nightmare finally came true after 2 years of remote working.
No worries. We continue to go through questions. I think we're in a good spot.
Okay.
There were some that were more. I just thought you were more well suited to answer and prepared today than I was. So I will go and jump into those if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
One was from a registrant, which was how to prepare students for when their benefits end.
Okay. So I think there's a couple of pieces here that come to mind for me. One is, I'm not sure if we're talking about students that their benefits end because maybe at one point they were eligible for SNAP and they're no longer eligible when they recertify, or if it's students that are not aware that they have to recertify either every 6 months or every year, depending on the state that they're in. So I would say there's some of that context that I'm not sure of. I think like making, if you're regularly doing SNAP outreach to students, making them aware of recertification processes is something we could talk about in the Learning Collaborative. Maybe that's a piece of this. I think another piece of it is benefits being one component of a more robust basic needs strategy, where you are able to, if a student's benefits end because they're no longer eligible for something, that you are able to help support their needs with pantries or emergency aid, that sort of stuff.
Great, helpful. This next question comes from Edna. Could students present their student aid report directly to the contact person?
I'm not sure if I understand what's meant by the contact person. Like, I'm not sure if that maybe means someone at like a benefits administering agency. The way that states are going to verify, if I'm in the right direction there, the way that benefits administering agencies or caseworkers are going to verify that a student is meets a SNAP student exemption and is able to apply for SNAP is the documentation they're going to accept is going to be a little bit varied across states. So I'd be happy to dig into the weeds on that question more with the individual. I'm not sure if I'm quite getting at the right thing or not.
Problem. Another one is, can multiple people from the same school apply as part of the cohort?
So I would say one person should apply to be a part of the Learning Collaborative, but we will definitely work with more than one staff person at your school. Like it would help us to coordinate with one staff person at the school. We expect that folks will be working across various roles and teams to actually implement this work together, and we welcome that. I would just ask that folks submit one application to the Learning Collaborative from the same institution.
Fantastic. We have another question. If you do not ask for data from institutions, so I think going back to how there's no data sharing with BDT, do the institutions report to BDT on their progress at any point?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll work together around what kind of evaluation metrics make sense. In some cases, we've been able to learn from some aggregate numbers from institutions, which is really helpful without sharing any kind of personal or protected data, to know like how many students did you outreach to, if you're directing them to a campus resource, how many came to that office without us needing to know who. If we're working together and you're directing students to online or self-service applications, sometimes we're able to measure like clicks to or an institution is able to measure clicks to the link to see how many students actually engaged with that application. So it can look a little different depending on the campus context, but that's the sort of thing that we would want to learn together with an institution about, and never anything that was individual level data without, not in this context.
Thank you. We have two more questions that are pretty related, so I'm going to tie them together. First, what are some qualities in an organization that BDT is looking for to be selected? And kind of tied to that, they're asking how many applications we receive per year, but I'll just clarify, this is the first year for the learning cohort, so maybe how many we expect to receive.
Yeah, as Daniel said, this is our first year doing this, so I'm not totally sure how many applications we're going to get. I'm hoping that we get at least a handful across each of these 4 states. And the qualities that we're looking for, what it comes down to is we want to have impact together with you. So we want to know that you're committed to carrying this out across your teams on the campus. We want to know that you have a texting platform, like I mentioned. We want we'll take a look at, we ask in the application, how many of your students are Pell eligible as a proxy for helping us understand financial need on your campus. So we do want to think about working with institutions that have a higher level of students with, or a higher proportion of students that have some level of financial need.
Great. And those are all the questions. Maybe give just about 15 seconds or so in case anybody else has any additional questions. And then we'll move on to that other topic I was about to jump to. Oh, we do have another question.
Okay,
from Brittany. So in addition to student outreach communications, how have campuses scaled strategies to provide guidance and ensure follow through? Big bottleneck being staff capacity.
Guidance and ensure follow through. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen campus partners. I the ensure follow through is tripping me up. I don't know that anyone's at a place of like ensuring follow through, but I think like some of the strategies that I can think of, we're doing some work with a group of SUNY community colleges right now, and at least two of them are doing two-way texting, where the first sort of level of it is students are being directed to the state's self-service application to try to funnel students to that resource. But they of course want to make sure, we know that students can get stuck on tricky parts of benefit applications. And so like the second part of it is following up with students with a two-way text to say like, hey, did you do this? Or like replied help if you need more help. And if they do that, then they get funneled to the appropriate campus or local resource that can help them one-on-one. So there's strategies like that where we can kind of like do something that's for a larger group of students, and the ones who are able to do it on their own, that's great. They've gotten the service that they need, but still providing a higher level of follow-up to students that could use some support with that process.
Fantastic. I think that does conclude our questions for now. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Awesome. Thank you all for your time. Feel free to email us if you think of other questions. Daniel, is my screen showing up for you since I got kicked out? Okay, great. So feel free to email us at this email address if you think of other questions. And thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to let Daniel talk for just a second about our FAFSA assistance chatbot before we wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Here at BDT, we're not just concerned about helping current college students get access to college benefits, but also how do we help ensure that students have pathways to higher education in general. And one of the answers to that is our AI chatbot, Wyatt, which is available both on SMS texting platform on your phone and also a web bot at getfafsahelp.org. There's a QR code here on the screen for those who'd like to go to the page and check it out. This is a totally free resource that we have for students to leverage in this, confusing and complex FAFSA years. I'm sure you're all aware that will provide some 24/7 support for students, parents, and counselors while they're helping or completing the FAFSA. It's also a two-way chat bot. So if they sign up for the texting version of the bot, they'll also get some proactive outreach to nudge them along in completing their FAFSA, some helpful tips and updates as we continue to receive them from the U.S. Department of Education. And when you're clicking on that QR code, when it takes you to the website, there'll be an educator resources tab of the website up in the upper right-hand corner. We've created some flyers, PowerPoints, email templates, and videos that you can use to disseminate Wyatt out to the students that are using it. And I'll just flag that Wyatt is built to support not just the first-time filer, high school senior, but also refilers, and also helping them to translate a lot of the language shifts that have happened with the new FAFSA this year from what they're typically used to of having filled it out in the past. So again, our goal here is just to get Wyatt in the hands of as many students as we can this year to help them complete their FAFSA. So we just want to highlight this as a resource that you could use and disseminate to your students. If you have any questions about it, you can reach out to the same email address on the previous slide if you want to go back, Stephanie. That is highered@BDT, or sorry, highered@bdtrust.org, and we'd be happy to help you with that as well.